news stories for you viewers. Firstly, it seems that nature does not want Ethiopian government to launch another major offensive on Tigray and TDF, because next 2 weeks weather forecast shows that heavy rains are expected in the next 2 weeks. We'll talk about that. Secondly, in eastern Sudan, protests have been underway for the past few days, and now reportedly protesters have blocked two major pipelines, and these protests are now becoming very intense. Sudanese government is under pressure how to handle these protests. Who is behind these protests? We'll talk about that. The protests are underway in eastern Sudan, which shares border with Eritrea as well, in Kassala state. Lastly, viewers, today some Tigray-backed news sources shared images of a tank and some missiles which TDF is in possession of. This is basically anti-aircraft missile which was shown today. TDF is showing its anti-aircraft capabilities. We'll talk about that. Firstly, viewers, next 2 weeks weather forecast shows that heavy rains are expected in Ethiopia. Especially on Ethiopian highlands, heavy rains are expected. Ethiopian highlands are in Tigray, in Amhara, Ras Dajan, highest mountain of Ethiopia, is part of this Ethiopian highland, which is in Amhara region, and I have informed you about fighting close to Ras Dajan in Amhara region. So next 2 weeks, more rains. Ethiopia is having an extended rainy season this year, viewers. It's the end of September and still no signs of the start of dry season. More rain in the next 2 weeks. It means that Ethiopian government wouldn't be able to start the major offensive which we have been talking about the next 2 weeks. TDF has now more time to step up its military operations on Dasi and Gondar fronts. Ethiopian government has made some preparations, no doubt about that. It has purchased weaponry. I have been updating you about that. It has done some recruitments and it has planned a major offensive. What will be the target of this major offensive? That remains to be seen. Will Ethiopian government launch another invasion of Tigray, or will it just hit TDF positions inside Amhara? That remains to be seen. Last night, Tigray President Debretsion Gebremichael also talked about this new offensive, expected offensive from Ethiopian government. He said that that Ethiopian government wanted to run over Tigray once again. So yes, preparations are there, we know, but when will this new offensive start? That remains to be seen. We have seen a statement from Ethiopian Air Force Chief as well that preparations have been completed, but it seems that nature wants peace in Ethiopia. Let's see. Secondly, viewers, in eastern Sudan, protests have been going on for the past few days. After a failed coup in Sudan, protests started in eastern Sudan. In eastern Sudan, last year in October, some rebel groups signed a peace deal with transitional government of Sudan. But a group, Bija group, an ethnic group, has started protests. This Bija tribe says that it was not on board last October when peace deal was signed between some rebel groups and Sudan's transitional government. This group has been conducting protests, and airport in eastern Sudan has been closed, viewers, and Port Sudan, the main port in Sudan, it is also closed. Now, the protesters have blocked two major pipelines. One pipeline uh, is from South Sudan to Sudan. South Sudan exports its oil through Sudan, through Port Sudan, viewers, and this pipeline, major pipeline on which South Sudan relies, it has been blocked by protesters. Secondly, the other pipeline is Sudan's pipeline. The oil imports which arrive at this Port Sudan port, these are then transported via this pipeline to Sudan. This pipeline has also been blocked by protesters. So, two major pipelines blocked. Protesters want transitional government to review last October's peace deal. These protests started after a failed coup in Khartoum, in Sudan. And after the failed coup, we saw tensions between Sudanese military and Sudanese politicians. Sudanese military has been accusing Sudanese politicians of creating an environment which is coup prone because economic conditions are not improving. But Sudanese politicians are raising their fingers towards Sudanese military. They does not want to hand over leadership of Sudan's Sovereignty Council to Sudan's politicians. Tensions have been rising, and after that these protests started. And some analysts say that some factions of Sudanese military are behind these protests in eastern Sudan, and they want to put pressure upon civilian government of Abdullah Hamdok. So far, no signs of any solution. Protests are underway. Two major pipelines are blocked. Lastly, viewers, today some TPLF elite news sources shared pictures of some weapons captured by Tigray Defense Force. You can see the first picture. It is a T-72B tank. It is a modern version of T-72 tank, viewers. It costs around $2 million US. We saw pictures of two T-72B tanks a few days ago, which TDF claimed to have captured. Now, this one, is it a new capture or is it an earlier capture? We don't know, viewers, but this is definitely a T-72B tank. Secondly, you can see S-75 Divina missile here. These missiles were captured by TDF when TDF regained control of Mekelle. These are anti-aircraft missiles, viewers. Does TDF have launchers and radars to use these missiles? We don't know, viewers, but TDF has shown its anti-aircraft weaponry so far. We have seen Iglo manpads shown by TDF, which are effective against low-flying aircrafts. Then TDF is in possession of some ZU-23-2 anti-aircraft guns as well, which are also effective against low-flying aircrafts, and these S-75 surface-to-air missiles, which are effective against aircraft. So TDF has some anti-aircraft weaponry. It does not have an air force, but it can counter ENDF, Ethiopian Air Force, to some extent. Thank you for watching.